Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. My name is Samer, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can scrape Yelp reviews using R. In this video, I'll primarily be using rvest, so let's go ahead and get started. So for this example in particular, I'll be looking at reviews from Chipotle, and this is from a specific branch in Dallas. What I'm trying to get here are three things. For each review, I'm trying to get the review date, the review rating, and the review text. So this is going to be useful in the sense if we're trying to do some analysis, some text analysis in particular, over time to see how the reviews have changed over time, and also to analyze the ratings based on, like, if they're 5 stars, what kind of words are being used. If it's 1 star, what kind of phrases and terms are being used. So I think this could be a useful set of data that we could use for some future text analysis. But for now, let's go ahead and jump straight into R and see how we can collect this data. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to load in the necessary packages. So in this case, we're only going to be needing the rvest package, and then we're also going to be needing the tidyverse package. Rvest is for the web scraping, and then the tidyverse is for the data cleaning and all the other cool data functions. So next we're going to have to load in the URL object, and in order to do so, I'm just going to go ahead and copy our URL and paste it into a URL object. So I'm going to call it URL equals to that URL. Then we're going to have to convert this URL into an HTML object so we can be able to work with the HTML. And to do that, I'm just going to create a page object, and I'm going to set it equals to read underscore HTML, and I'm going to pass in the URL. So if I run that, it's taking a little bit of time, and there we go. It's now populated the HTML. So now we can go ahead and get started. So what I said is I wanted to extract three things. I wanted to extract the date, the rating, and the text. So in order to do so, we're just going to go ahead and right click and click on inspect so we can start inspecting the elements here. And I want to look particularly at the date. The date falls within a span tag, and it has a class name over here that seems to be somewhat unique. So let's go and try to find these dates using the class name. So in order to do this, I'm going to go ahead and use the XPath locator for this. So the XPath is a really cool method in locating elements, and I think it's very effective, and I'll show you how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and call this review dates, and I'm going to set this equal to the page, and I'm going to pipe in a function called HTML elements. And what this is going to do is it's a function that will return to you the elements that you specify. And I'm going to specify the elements by using the XPath method, and I'm going to set the XPath equals to a /, and I'm going to set it to an asterisk. So what that means is search within the entire document and search for any of the elements, or return any of the elements. And the criteria that I'm looking for is that the class is supposed to equal to that class name that we had in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it in there. And that should locate the XPath for me. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pipe this into an HTML text function so that it can return the text for me. So if I were to run this, it's going to give me a lot of different things that I don't necessarily need. It's going to give me a bunch of text, and all these elements fall under, they have this class attribute. So I'm just interested in these dates. And in order to extract the dates in this case, I'll have to write a regular expression to match that date format. And in order to do that, I'm just going to use the str_detect function from the string_r package. So we're going to start off by passing in a period and then passing in the str_detect function. And what the period means is the period represents everything that's come right over here. So in this case, it would be the list of these values. So what I'm trying to say here is I'm going to just say str_detect, where our pattern right here is also the period. Our string is the period, and then our pattern would be, we're trying to create a date pattern, so it starts with a number, so that would be a digit, and it could have one or more because the month could have 1 digit or it could have 2 digits in this case. Then we're going to go ahead and put in a slash, so we're going to have to use square brackets to make sure that it detects the slash, and then we're going to go ahead and include another digit, and this can also be 1 or more. then we're going to include another slash. And then last but not least, we're going to include a digit. But since this is in years, so the year is always going to have 4 digits. So we could just specify that it will have 4 digits. So we're going to put some squiggly brackets, put a 4, and then end it with a $sign to indicate the end of the string. So if we were to look at all of this and run it, you will notice that it's actually extract all the 10 dates for each of the 10 reviews on this page. And that's what we want. So we'll go ahead and store it in the review dates object. Okay, now let's get into the review rating. So the rating over here, it's a little tricky because it's not really text, it's an icon. Now in the human eye, you could tell that this review is 5 stars, but there's no text that indicates that. So how can we go and determine that? So we're gonna go ahead and inspect this element. And if we notice, it does fall within a div tag over here. It has a long class name. But what I do notice here is that it has an ARIA label, and the ARIA label actually tells you what that rating is. It says 5-star rating. So let's see if we can access the ARIA label over here. Now, in order to do that, we're just going to have to go in and create another object called review ratings, and I'm going to set that equals to page, and I'm going to pipe in the HTML elements function, and we're also going to be using the XPath here as well. So I'm going to set the XPath equals to // and in this case, I'm going to be looking only for the div tags in this situation, so I'm just going to set this equals to div, and then I'm going to say we are looking particularly for the ARIA label. So in this case, we're going to set the ARIA label attribute to contain the phrase rating. So how do we do that? The best way to do that is by simply saying using the contains function. So this tells it, hey, look for the ARIA label which contains the value of rating. So that's what it does. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I am going to go ahead and let me just go ahead and see if I can extract it. Now, since this is not text, we're going to have to specifically access the HTML attribute. And in order to do that, we're just going to type in HTML attributes. So we're going to go ahead and run all of this and see if this is going to solve that. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. And if you notice, it does pull in a lot of different things for us. So that's not necessarily what we're trying to look for over here. So how do we handle this? Now what's happening over here is it seems like it's pulling in a lot of different things. It's not just pulling in these ratings. It could be possibly pulling in these ratings and these ratings. So we need to really specify our location, and the way to do it is we want to only pull in the ratings just from the review. So let's go ahead and see. So this right here, what I'm highlighting over here is a review section. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the review section, and as we can see, it's within a div tag that has a class name that starts with review. So maybe we can go ahead and use that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the first part of this and make sure we can use that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pass it right after over here, and I'm going to say HTML elements, and I'm going to set it to an XPath, and the XPath is also equal to a div tag, but this case we're not going to say contains, we're going to say starts with, because it begins with the review. So we're going to say starts with, and I'm going to set that equal to, in this case it would be the class name, so it would be the class, and we're going to set it equals to review. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, close the bracket over here, and then we're going to pipe it in. Now, in order for us to specify that we should be looking for this within this, we do need to put in a period here, because it will tell the rvest to look for this element within this element. So that's the whole purpose of the period over there. So let's see if that gets us what we need. And it's still giving us definitely a few more things. Let's see. So, we do need to specify for the attributes, we do need to specify the attributes. So we're going to have to say ARIA label. That's something that I was forgetting. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, ARIA label, unused argument. Okay. I think it needs to be a singular one, I believe. If we look at that, there we go. Yeah. So it's supposed to be a singular one. It's not supposed to be with an S. It's supposed to be with just ATTR. and it's going to give us all the ratings. And if you notice, it gives us 10 ratings, as you can see over here. So that's very interesting, and that's exactly what we need. Now, one more thing that we could do is we could actually just remove the star rating, because we're only concerned with the number here. So what we could do is we could create another pipe and call this str remove all, and we are just going to remove the star rating. And then last but not least, we are going to convert this into a numeric format. So I'm just going to say as numeric. So if I just go ahead and just store this in the review ratings, and I look at the review ratings object, we're going to see that we have all the ratings in a numerical format. Great, so we've done a lot. Now let's go ahead and do the final piece of scraping, which is scraping the text. Now for the text, we're going to have to click on the text, and we can see that it falls within a span tag, and the span tag has a class of raw, but it also falls within a p tag with a class name of comment. So I might as well just go off of the p tag, and let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to say review text is equal to page HTML elements, and I'm also going to be doing an XPath, where the XPath is going to be equal to, we're going to be looking throughout the whole document for the p tag, where I believe it was the class name. Yeah, the class name begins with a comment, so we're just going to have to say starts with, and then we're going to say class, and we're going to set it equals to comment. Close that, close the parentheses, and close the bracket. And then we're going to extract the HTML text out of this, and let's try and run that to see if it works. So if we notice, it actually did pull in the text for us. It pulled in all the 10 reviews, and that's pretty cool. This one seems to be fairly easier to do. So now if we store this in the object, we have all of our things. We have our rating, we have our date of review, and we have the text of the review. But this is only for the first page. How can we do this for the remainder of the pages? Now this can be a little tricky, because sometimes you may not necessarily know how many times you should flip through the page. So one of the things you need to notice is you need to see if you can catch some type of pattern here. So it seems that we have 8 pages in total, and if we were to click through the pages, we need to see if there's any changes in the URLs. So if we click on number 2, for example, we notice that it jumped to start equals 10. So all it did is it added an ampersand and start equals to 10. So let's see what happens if we switch to the 3rd page. So it just looks like it switched to 20. So let's say if we switch to 8, it should be 70. So what it seems is that right on the 2nd page, it just adds a and start equals 10, and then it increments by 10 every time you switch through the pages. So I think we can come up with some type of pattern here that could work for us. So let's go ahead and see what we could do. So I'm going to go ahead all the way to the top, and I'm going to simply create a new object called page nums. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the page, and I want to be able to extract this number over here right at the bottom. So I want to know this number, the one that comes after the of. So in order to do so, I'm going to go ahead and inspect the element over here, and we're going to notice that it's within a span class. Now, of course, this span class is one of the span class we used for the date, I believe. So we're going to have to find something a bit more unique. So maybe we could go off of this div class over here and use the entire thing and see if that works for us. So I'm going to go ahead and say HTML elements, and I'm going to set the XPath equals to, a double slash, and then I'm just going to say look within the div. And in this case, I'm just going to say the class is equals to this whole thing over here. I know it seems a little bit long, but let's see if it does work. And then we're just going to set it to HTML text. So if we were to run all of this, oh, it actually does get it for us. It says 1 of 8. Perfect, perfect. So we're just interested in the 8 part over here. So what we could do is we could just say str extract all. And what we're interested in is what comes after the of. So we're just going to say of, and then just gonna basically continue this with whatever comes after it. So if we were to run this, it's gonna extract of 8, basically. It's gonna extract that. So let's just say, instead of extract all, I'm just gonna say extract. Let's see if that does it for us. Okay, that's great. And then last but not least, I don't need the of really. So in this case, actually just remove this space over here, and then I'm just going to say str remove, and I'm just going to say remove the of and the space. So if I were to run that, it should give me the 8. And of course, we can obviously convert this into a numeric value as well. So I'm just going to pipe this in, and I'm just going to say as numeric. So if we were to run this and we try to type in the page nums, we should get an 8. Wonderful, wonderful. So now it's time for us to create some type of sequence. So we want it to jump from a 10 to a 20 to a 30. So how do we do that? We're just going to simply create a sequence variable, and I'm going to call it page sequence, and I'm going to set it equals to the sequence function, where the from value is equal to 0 and the to value is going to be equal to whatever the page nums is times 10. And then I'm going to also subtract a 10 from it. So the reason why I did this is because our page nums in this case is 8, so 8 times 10 is 80, minus 10, that's a 70, because on the last page, you can notice that it is a 70. So that's why we did that. And then we are going to increment this by 10. So if I was to run this, and then I wanted to load in the page sequence, it's going to show that it's from 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Wonderful. So now it's time for us to write a loop and put all of this into a loop. Now before we do that, I want to make sure that we're storing our ratings, our dates, and our text in vectors. So in order to do that, I am going to go into here, and I'm going to say store items in vectors, and I'm just going to simply set them equals to the vectors, to empty vectors. So I'm just going to say review date all. I'm going to set that equals to an empty vector, and then I'm going to say review rating all. I'm going to set that equals to an empty vector, and then I'm going to just say review text all, and I'm going to set that to an empty vector. And I'm just going to go ahead and run all of these. Perfect. And now we can write our for loop, and the way to do it, we could just say for I in page sequence. So it's referring to the sequence that we wrote over here, and we can get started. And if we can start by saying if I is equals to 0, then what we're going to do is we're just going to set the page equals to read HTML URL. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I equals 0, that would represent the first page. And in the first page, we just have this URL. We don't have the additional ampersand start equals number. We don't have that. That's only starting the second page. So that's why we have that. And then if that condition fails, we're just going to put an else statement that says page is equals to read HTML URL, or we'll actually paste to 0 URL, where we're pasting in an ampersand start equals to whatever that number is. So I'm just going to go ahead and pass in the I. So that would be the number, and looks like that is the syntax for that. So that's great. And then what we could do is we could just simply take all of these, and we're just going to cut them and paste them into our for loop over here. And then last but not least, for each page, we want to make sure that we are appending these to their appropriate vectors. So in order to do that, I'm just going to set the review date all, and I'm going to set it equals to append, where I'm appending the review date all with the review dates. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the review rating all, and I'm going to append the review rating all, and I'm just going to say review ratings. And then last but not least, I'm just going to say review text all, and I'm going to set that equals to the append review text all, and I'm going to just say review text. Okay, so that will append all of these. And now we should be able to run these. So I'm just going to go, I already loaded in my vectors. So I'm just going to go ahead and highlight this for loop, and I'm just going to run it. I'm a little thirsty. Whew. Okay, let's see how long it takes. It's only a few pages, shouldn't be taking too long. And it is done. Okay, so it looked through all the pages, it scraped everything we needed, and now what we could do is we could add this into a data frame. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and create a df variable, and I'm just going to use the data.frame function, and I'm just going to create a column called date, and I'm going to set it equals to review date all, and then I'm going to go into the rating, and I'm going to set the rating equals to review rating all. And then last but not least, I'm going to use the text, and I'm going to set it equals to review text all. So if I were to run that, we go ahead and we have a data frame, and if we look at our data frame, it actually has all our data loaded in. So it has the date of the review, the rating of that review, and the text of that review. If you wanted to do a further like date analysis, you could convert this the date column into a data type. So what we could do is we could say df date, and we could set that equals to as date df date, and we have to specify the formatting for this. So we're going to have to put in a % of month, and a % of day, and a % of a capital Y, because it's 4 digits. And if we were to run that and we look at the structure of our df, we're going to notice that now it's in a date format. And if we look in our data set, we can see the date format. So there you go. That was a very quick example of how to scrape Yelp. Of course, Yelp is one of the more difficult websites to scrape. I think you'll probably experience some more difficulty, especially if like the business owner replied to some of these reviews. So what the scraper is going to think that those replies from the business owner are reviews. So those could be a little bit tricky when it comes to scraping those. But overall, I hope this is a simple example to show you that really any data on the web can be scrapable. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something new. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more R content and data analytics content. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.